Good to speak to you again, David. I want to start off on the housing policy because it's a big policy announced by Peter Dutton on Sunday. It's a huge issue in this country, housing affordability. Interest rate deductions on mortgages are a common practice in some European countries and in the US, but it's a big policy move here. I find it extraordinary now that Labor's opposing this, and I didn't realise that today that they get access, as all MPs do, to making that same tax deduction on their second homes in Canberra and elsewhere.
Yeah, and Chris, I'll declare I'm one of those. I claim a deduction on the property that I own in Canberra. I'm not going to be a hypocrite, but I want to see young people get into a home. And this is an opportunity to give them a tax deduction. This is what it's targeted at, but what we've done is make sure it's about increasing supply. We haven't said this is about an existing dwelling. We've said it has to be one that's going to be built because we've got a supply issue. And we're the only ones that are saying the policies that we're putting forward is about supply. And so this is why it's important to get a differentiation about what Anthony Albanese is talking about. We're simply saying to young people, there is hope. And it might be that you have to start off in a townhouse in the middle of town or in one of the suburbs, not necessarily with a 4-bedroom, double lock-up garage home, but it's what you can afford. As my mum and dad did in Chinchilla, they built a 3-bedroom home with 1 bathroom and a garage on the side because that's all they could afford. So what we're saying to these young people of Australia, we're going to give you hope that if you want to go out and have a start in life, do what you can afford, and we're going to support you. We're going to support you because we've got an issue around supply, and that's just one of the suites of measures that we're going to put in place. But the biggest one too, mate, is immigration. Until we get immigration under control, we are tinkering at the edges, and we are going to be the ones that have the courage to face into immigration. We can't bring in 1.8 million people, and the people we do bring in this country, we are giving the biggest prize we can give to any person on this planet, a ticket to Australia. So why wouldn't we bring in some plumbers, some electricians, some tilers and some roofers to build supply rather than dog groomers and martial arts instructors?
Yes,
this crowd has prioritised. I mean, we just got to get back to common sense, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a lot of money, but we've got to give young people some hope.
We sure do, but I want to focus on this hypocrisy because there will be plenty of Labor politicians who enjoy that deductibility of interest payments on their second homes in Canberra, yet they pretend that sort of deductibility is unaffordable and unworkable to give that to first home buyers to give them a head start.
Yeah, and literally we're no different to anyone else in this country. And yes, we have different circumstances of having to go to Canberra, but so too do young people. And so what we're saying to young people is that if you take that big step, particularly in terms of trying to increase supply, this is a supply measure. It's not about increasing demand, it's about a supply measure. Why wouldn't we do that? But for us to sit in Canberra, the 227 politicians that are given a very privileged position to go to Canberra and to shape this nation's future, why wouldn't we shape it thinking about young people in our minds about how we can give them the start to be able to take an opportunity that we get to take an opportunity to have every year in our tax return? I just think that this is a unique opportunity to think outside the square and do what we can in increasing supply and making sure it's targeted about new dwellings. Because, you know, if we're building new dwellings and they're taking those up, that builds supply behind them where other Australians who aren't first home buyers can actually take up that supply. That's common sense. That's what Peter and I are just trying to bring back to this conversation, just some decent common sense.
Well, we do have out of control immigration. It's far higher than what Labor said it would be. They don't seem to be able to get it down. You do have a cost of living crisis, an electricity pricing and supply pricing, the housing crisis, and you're putting up clear policies to deal with some of these issues, yet the polls are not shifting for you. They're favouring Labor increasingly. What's going wrong for you at the halfway point of this election campaign?
Yeah, Chris, I think this is actually more a 2019 election than it is a 2022 election. I don't think the national polls are reflective of the hyper-local campaigns that are taking place there. And I think, to your point, it's exactly about cost of living, about, in particularly as you get out of the inner suburbs where there is not necessarily a bigger cost of living crisis as it is you get out further out, they're not feeling it as much. And I think what's important is that while we're not walking away from the national polls and what they reflect, what we're seeing now, internal polling, is that as you get out where Australians are struggling, and we're saying to them, we're going to give you a tax cut of $1,200 an individual, $2,400 a family, who are struggling to pay their mortgage, struggling to fill the car up, struggling to put food on the table. We're going to give them a tax cut, but we're also going to say to every Australian that drives a car, every time you fill it up, you're going to fill up and save, on average, $14 every time you do that. That goes back into your pockets, but that's before you talk about business. Business being able to save out of their wallets and be able to drive down your cost of living. We've just simply got to talk about the here and now and our legacy about saying we're going to face into the economy's problem. Energy is the economy, and unless you're prepared to fix that with taking Australian gas and let Australians use it first, because Anthony Albanese was part of the government that sold it all out of this country and didn't let us to use it first, and then have nuclear energy come in, we are kicking this problem down the road that costs you $7 billion already.
David Littleproud, thanks so much for joining us. We are out of time. David Littleproud there, the Nationals leader.